some might say, is it that helpful to undermine the Prime Minister at this stage in negotiations?
Well, we're at the stage now where Parliament is expecting and anticipating the government machinery, the full weight of the government machine to put all its pressure on MPs to agree the deal, and the full force of the scaremongering around Project Fear if Parliament doesn't agree that. And I really don't think that's an acceptable choice. This choice between a deeply flawed deal that's going to leave us effectively as a vassal state to the rest of the European Union with no control at all, no say in the rules that are going to control a huge swathe of our economy. That's wholly unacceptable. Versus the chaos of no deal, I genuinely think it's time to pause and to take stock of the alternatives that are there on offer. What this deal shows is that a huge gulf has now opened up between the lavish promises of an idealised Brexit that were made during the referendum campaign versus the paltry reality of this deal. We were promised an ability to strike trade deals. Far from it. We will have very limited ability to strike meaningful trade deals of our own. We were promised that the UK was going to become a tiger economy on the edge of Europe. Actually, we're signing up to a common rule book which we won't control, which will be the same as all the rules currently applying across the rest of the European Union. And we were promised that this was going to bring back control, take back control. In fact, the reality is we're ceding control. We have a shared say at the moment in the EU rules that govern the single market. We will be subject to them entirely without any say at all in future. It's a travesty of the referendum result, and that's why I think it's so important that we now go back to the people and check that this is indeed actually the Brexit that they want.
Both you and your brother have now resigned from government, albeit with very different viewpoints. Do you not think you're better off influencing from within? Where does this leave you now?
Well, there comes a point where you have to take a stand, and we're now hours, days, maybe days, maybe hours away from this deal. And it's really important that we begin this urgent debate about the alternatives, because, as I said, I do not think we're being presented as a parliament and as a country with the right choice. It cannot be a choice between a wholly inadequate deal that leaves us in a sort of vassal state relationship to the EU, or no deal at all, and the chaos that will bring. There are alternatives, and I think it's absolutely vital that we now explore those and we use the mechanism of a referendum to do exactly that.
So why now, Mr Johnson? You could have resigned months ago. Some might say that you've resigned now to inflict maximum damage on the Prime Minister at this crucial stage of negotiation.
On the contrary, I campaigned for Remain in the referendum, but I accepted the result. I voted for the Article 50 process to start, and I've kept my peace for 2 years, more than 2 years, to allow the Prime Minister the maximum possible negotiating space, not to limit her room for manoeuvre. I haven't spoken up before, but we're now at the point where MPs like myself, are going to have to take a view. Is this deal in the national interest or not? It's clearly inferior than our current relationship within the EU. Prominent Leave campaigners, including my brother, have said that it's inferior as a deal to our current membership of the EU. So on what basis could we possibly agree to it?
You supported the referendum. You voted for Article 50 to be triggered. Why now have you decided that it's the best time to change your mind?
Well, as I said, I've given the Prime Minister the full period of time, 2 years, to do her best to secure a deal that's in the national interest. As I said, I voted for Article 50 to commence this process. I respect the referendum result. But we're now at the point where MPs need to take a view. Is this deal in the national interest or not? And in my view, and in the view, I think, of others, it clearly isn't. It leaves us in a vassal state-client relationship to the rest of the EU with no say at all over the rules that will govern a huge swathe of our economy. That's completely unacceptable and unsustainable for a proud democracy such as ours.
Now, in your resignation yesterday, you talked about how Brexit has divided the country, it's divided politics, it's divided families, as you know only too well. What's Christmas going to be like in the Johnson household?
Look, there are political differences. We disagree about Brexit, but actually we have a shared analysis on the limitations and the profound flaws in the deal that the government is about to put before Parliament. It leaves us in a client-state relationship with the EU. It's got a massive democratic deficit in it, which in my view is completely unsustainable for a democracy such as ours.
What realistically do you hope to achieve by your resignation? Number 10 have been unequivocal there will not be a second referendum of any kind.
Yeah.
What could you possibly hope for now?
Well, of course, Number 10 would say that, wouldn't they? I mean, government policy is always government policy until it isn't. If you cast your mind back to last year when the Prime Minister and Number 10 were ruling out a general election, well, in fact, we ended up having a general election, notwithstanding all of the repeated assurances that it would be against the national interest to have one. So take that with a pinch of salt. If Parliament wants a referendum, the legislation can be passed quickly and the Electoral Commission could advise on the nature of the question and so on. But if there's a will, a way can be found.
And your thoughts on Dominic Raab, the Brexit secretary, who said on Wednesday, I hadn't quite understood the full extent on this.
Well, I'm not going to comment on those remarks directly. What I would say from my experience in the Department for Transport is that the complexities of managing no deal from a freight perspective are profound. We would face major bottlenecks on key arteries going to our core channel ports. This would be a very, very big setback for the manufacturers whose just-in-time supply chains depend on them being able to get parts in and out of the country seamlessly. So do not underestimate the damage that a no deal would do to our economy. And that's why I think this choice that we're going to be presented with, the Prime Minister's deal, flawed as it is, or the chaos of no deal, is completely unacceptable. There are better options and we must explore them now.
And just lastly, our story today that senior ministers have briefed the Prime Minister on a secret plan amid fears there will be no deal if her withdrawal deal is not voted through in Parliament. What do you know about that? Do you know anything about this secret plan?
No, I'm not aware of it.